hello again, Struckweb. Today I'm bringing you a build for the Slayer, and this build I've called Grimnir's Anvil. This is mainly because the set we're using is Grimnir's Herald, and the main skill for damage is Strike of the Anvil. Of course, the heroic Call to Oath also does a lot of damage. And we do, if you can see, sometimes even up to 2 million crits just from our Fiery Aura. And this is on Chaos 5. All the footage you're seeing is Chaos 5, even the boss fight at the end is Chaos 5. As you see, some hits end up being 4 million, 5 million, 6 million. You should also be able to see something like 7, 8 million while you're watching the recorded footage. Keep in mind that this is mostly due to the green gear I'm wearing, so you won't be able to do as good on Chaos 5. But with heroic gear, Chaos 3 will feel kind of the same as you're seeing me doing on Chaos 5. So start up with red gear and eventually, once you farm up green gear, move on to higher difficulties as you get the pieces. And with full green gear you should probably be able even to do Chaos 6. The gear for this setup is a full set of Grimnir's Herald. So you do need that in order to get Call to Oath as improved as heroic version, and to get that fiery aura around you together with that extra 50% damage. Probably the same skills and build I'm using could go well with the Undefeated set, the challenge set. But then you would have heroic Last Bastion instead of heroic Call to Oath. So it's up to you to decide whether you want it this way or the other. So for the weapons, I'm kind of not using the best ones I wanted. And maybe something like this would have been a better setup, having Last Fight and then having Heartseeker. But I didn't have a Heartseeker that's as well rolled as the Bloodthirsty one. And of course, if you do have one that is a better road, you should use it, especially knowing that those 200% to stun targets could be procced by stunning with the heroic skill Call to Oath, and with another one which you could use Mountain's Wrath as a god skill. I've explained further how you can do that in the god skills and skills section, so you could check that out. So yeah, I was using the Bloodthirsty one when recording this video because it was better rolled than the Heartseeker, but ideally I would use Heartseeker and Last Fight. They combine very well together, and as you can see, the Heartseeker gives good damage. So this is much needed. We're losing a bit of health regeneration, but we can easily negate that, especially knowing that we have Last Bastion to keep healing ourselves. So this is nice, extra 100% crit damage, which does not show on your tooltip. So it's on top of what you see in the tooltip. And with this Heartseeker, if you find a good Heartseeker, that's another 200 crit damage to stunned enemies. And you can stun enemies with this skill. And also with your axe throw, so it's easy to stun. There's some options I would mention later when discussing the skills on how to stun enemies if you want to get rid of Avenging Charge to get something else for stunning. Now, since we rely heavily on cooldown reduction, so we can spam Ancestor's Gift and we can spam Strike of the Anvil, Rage helps. Rage does help, like you can see if I get my Rage to 10. I don't know why it didn't go up, it should go up now. Maybe it's glitched, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna try again. Usually using those skills gives me Rage, maybe something is buggy on my end. But when you get Rage, your attack goes up. And if you have a skill like the one I'll show you later, you do more damage, of course. Another thing that goes up is the cooldowns. The cooldowns kind of get better when you get your Rage. Something to keep in mind also is Mountain Pendant. I was using that because of the skill it gives us. Hitting an enemy has a chance to reduce the current cooldown and grant energy. You do need the energy a bit, not so much, only for when you wanna be moving around and using charge, Avenging Charge superior. So alternatively I could have used this. This is a great choice, it gives good bonuses. There's other options you could do depending on what you want, but kind of I had this very good road and I probably could have used it for more damage, but I decided not to use it while recording the video so I can show how a mountain pendant could help us keep our cooldowns low. There are other options to get our cooldowns low, such as Fiery Ring of Tori. There's also an axe that goes very well with the Bloodthirsty one. You can see this, the Impatient one axe. They go very well together if you have a good rolled one, especially if you use an elite only skill. You can grab, what's it called, not Spite Smite, but you could try and grab this skill. Body count, or maybe just the first version, that way you can stack some damage upon killing elite. But this is just a variation of the build, which I'll discuss later when discussing the skills. So keep that in mind. Impatient one can combine well with Bloodthirsty one. If you have a good rolled one, use it. This is also not a bad choice, but you would take a bit more damage, but it's also pretty good. If you have a good rolled Victor's Tribute, use it. But I think the best combo would be Last Fight and Heartseeker. So if you can get those two, use them. So now let's discuss some of the rings. The rings are kind of, I'm using not what I would prefer. Ideally I would have Insulation Ring and maybe Fiery Ring of Tori. If I'm not using Mountain Pendant, I would prefer Fiery Ring of Tori. If I'm using Mountain Pendant, then maybe I cannot use Fiery Ring of Tori and use something else. Insulation Ring is nice for healing and energy gain if you think you don't need it. Another suggestion would be Ring of Resonance. If you have a good rolled one, this will grant you great damage boost, and it stacks well with this skill because it has a cooldown, this has a cooldown, this has a cooldown, and this has a cooldown. So you only have two skills that don't have cooldown, so those skills can proc it. As you can see, while I jumped there were those white shockwaves, so it procs pretty well with those skills. So it's perfect for this build. I was not using it because it wasn't very well rolled. So what I was using was Ring of Shadow, which grants you some chance to dodge. It doesn't say how much, but I've tested it and it seems to dodge quite often. I would not suggest using Old Ring of Dexterity though. You don't need that extra 100% because it will only affect axe throw. You can experiment if you get a good one, and those rings you can get from here, the new green rings. The Ring of Shadow, Dexterity and not Insulation but Resonance. So this is Resonance, this is Shadow. Those I could suggest trying. Ring of Dexterity I wouldn't suggest for this build. So basically the build is stacking the cooldown reduction from Mountain Pendant and your gear, or Mountain Pendant and Fiery Ring of Tori if you feel you want more cooldown reduction. But if you don't feel like you need the cooldown reduction, great choices are Insulation Ring, Ring of Shadow, Ring of Resonance, or even something like Siege Breaker if you don't have any good rolled ones from the others, would be nice. My suggestion would be go for Insulation and Resonance if you have good rolls on those. Now this seems to sum up everything. Maybe I can give you some alternative choices for the pendant if you can get a Mountain Pendant and if you're using Ring of Tori. Then use something like Pendant of the Rebel or Pendant of Endless Water. Avoid using, what was it called? This pendant, Bloodstone Pendant, for now until they fix it. Once this is fixed, I would strongly suggest using Fiery Ring of Tori together with Ring of Resonance. Maybe you can sacrifice the Insulation Ring and a Bloodstone Pendant. You can heal yourself when using Ancestor's Gift, but if you think you don't need that, then don't worry, just go for a Mountain Pendant or a Pendant of the Rebel or a Endless Water Pendant. In any case, this is nice since you do have one god skill. It can be like an extra potion, but it's only 20% HP, so keep that in mind. This build doesn't have two god skills like my soldier or my scout, so maybe it's not as effective to use the bloodstone pendant. So this was it for the gear. Let me quickly move on to showing you the god skills. So for this build, the skills we're using are Axe Throw Mastered, Avenging Charge Superior, Call to Old Heroic, Strike of the Anvil Mastered, the basic Ancestor's Gift, and the Superior Last Bastion. We also use Spite's Might Mastered for extra bonus damage when the enemies are at 30% HP, and Deadbow Mastered, which makes stunned enemies take more damage and stunning them also inflicts bleeding. Then we have Eternal Grudge Superior, Rage lasts longer and is more effective. And then Trail of Blood Mastered combines very well with Deadbow Mastered. Bleeding enemies take more damage, damage increases based on the number of nearby bleeding enemies. So we're stunning them with this skill, and then they take more damage, they start bleeding, and once they start bleeding they take more damage from any other hits, and depending on how many enemies we manage to stun with this or this skill, then that would mean more enemies would start bleeding and there's gonna be more damage for us. For those, I suggest not getting rid of this extra 5% crit chance. I don't think anything else is worth putting there except maybe another passive, but we don't have the skill points for this. So keep the crit chance, and this can be replaced. Master Blacksmith could be removed, and you can take something like maybe extra HP if you need it, if you are not that geared up yet, if you have a heroic gear. You could also take something like Scrolls of the Elders for that extra damage reduction. This means you'll be doing only 5% to champions and only to champions instead of 10% to everything, but you have 5% damage reduction from them. While you're farming, I'd suggest just putting Lucky Charm here. It's not a bad choice, or Treasure Hunters if you're farming fragments. So as I mentioned, there's an option to replace this skill. You can replace this Avenging Charge Superior with Mountain's Wrath for extra stunning. But Mountain's Wrath is 12 points and you would only have 11 if you remove those 10 and have this one. This means you will have to demote something, and my suggestion would be demoting Spite's Might. You can demote Spite's Might, which means you gain extra 6 points. It will cost from 18 points it goes down to 12. That means you would have 7 points. And with that 10 it's 17, then you're using 12. And you would still have 5 points, which means maybe you can replace Master Blacksmith for an extra passive skill of your choice. It's up to you what you want to put there. And Mountain's Wrath would give you an extra ability to stun, but the cooldown is pretty low. But if you stack up the Mountain's Pendant and Fiery Ring of Tori, it would be nice because this will constantly keep resetting the cooldown. You could alternatively just use the basic one. Instead of changing anything, just remove Avenging Charge, put this one, then you still have extra 4 points, and this one, that would make it extra 5 points. You could still put an extra passive skill of your choice there. Something that might be nice is this Deep Gashes. Bleeding deals more damage. Each attack has a chance to stun bleeding enemies. So that's not a bad choice, but you probably won't have enough points. Maybe just this one, Bleeding deals more damage. This is also not bad, but you would have to keep juggling using Axe Throw. It's not so bad to try it, but maybe it's not the best choice. So those are just two suggestions, Deep Gashes or Relentless Charge. So what else could we say? If you unlock those, Instead of this damage, you could use this critical hit damage 50% using a skill with cooldown, increases crit hit damage for a few seconds. You have, as I said earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4 skills with cooldown. So this is great choice, but you need to unlock it. And you can unlock this from the right hand side over there in the invasion. So do rank 1 easy invasion, it shouldn't be difficult. Or you could unlock elixir of swiftness for extra reduction to the cooldowns when you use a potion, or maybe this for extra damage reduction, or this for extra damage bonus once using the potion. Instead of the duelist chain reaction, this is not so bad, but I wouldn't suggest this for this build. This also is not bad, but I also wouldn't suggest it. So just try to maybe unlock this one, and then you can replace that 10% damage with it. It costs 1 point, I think. Oh no, it costs 3 points. So you could still probably shift things around, maybe get rid of 1 level of this and use the basic one, but you still have enough points to use it, so don't worry. This seems to sum up everything for the skills. Another thing that might be good is just to mention it, you could do something with the god skills and get body count, and then body count goes very well with access, as I mentioned, access like using a combination of bloodthirsty one and impatient one. Let me explain in detail now about the god skills. For the god skills, as you can see, we're mixing things up a bit to the left and a bit to the right. And you can see we've taken this, it's an important one to get that extra cooldown reduction. I decided to take that extra HP, but maybe if you gear up like me with a green gear, you wouldn't need that extra HP. So it just depends. I would suggest getting that extra HP before you get green gear, so while you're just with heroic, you wouldn't have as much health, and this would help. There are 3 nodes that are random, and you can just pick anything, those 3 nodes. That extra 4 damage reduction to champions, 4 damage reduction to champions, and 2 max health. Those are optional, and you can just spend the points wherever you think it's good. So we're taking this extra 25% crit damage, and we are stopping because this one is 10% HP for the gain of 25 crit damage. And here we are stopping before the 10% damage and 5% maximum HP loss, because losing that and that would mean 15% HP lost. So something I can mention is you can take Rock Heart, so you can get rid of this and you can take Rock Heart and then maybe get rid of some points. Maybe you can get rid of this damage and you can take critical damage. And that's not a bad choice, so you can remove that, take this, remove that, take this, and then you're gaining 15% HP, you're losing 10% HP, and you're gaining 25% crit damage. But you have to shift things around and maybe remove Spite Smite Mastered, take Spite Smite Superior. This is the best option. Here we've taken the nodes all the way to here, as you can see, taking Spite Smite Mastered, Mountain's Rat Superior on the way. This is because there's 25% crit damage, another 25% crit damage, then another 25% crit damage, altogether 75, and 2% armor piercing, with some damage bonus to champions and some basic damage. You could kind of not take those, but that would mean a lot of crit damage lost. But if you decide to do so, you can just spend the points on something else. I personally think this is much needed, that armor piercing, although it costs us some cooldown reduction, which is negated by this note. If you think you can live without that armor piercing, don't take it, then you would be better off in regards to the cooldowns. And this maybe might go down to 3 seconds without stacking too many items with cooldown reduction. this kind of seems to be it for the god skills. Keep in mind everything I've given you is just some guidelines. You can make the build your own, experiment, shift things around, change things, uh, do whatever you think is better. Another option would be instead of taking this note or this note, you can spend 2 points here for the cooldown reduction. It's not a bad choice for that extra 2%. So now I can just leave you with some gameplay footage and a boss fight to top it off. As you can see, I'm not using the build to its fullest potential. I'm kind of jumping around with Strike of the Anvil and landing away from the monsters instead of landing on top of them most of the time, so I end up using my charging skill that leaves burning trails and end up quite distant from the monsters. But you could get used to it, you probably end up playing it much better than I do. Also, try to use your heroic skill right before using Last Bastion or while you've got your invulnerability from your god skill up. This way you can easily negate that HP loss by healing right after using it with Last Bastion, or just by having invulnerability while using it so you don't lose HP. Now, as you're seeing for the boss fight, I'm kind of jumping in then jumping out of combat to dodge his skills. Keep in mind some bosses would be more difficult than this one, and you have to kind of keep checking where you are, and you may need to also stand behind them, but be careful because most of them have a tail whip or a AoE circle that can hit you even if you're standing behind them. But just keep dodging the side hits, keep dodging the tail whips, and jump in, do some skills, especially when you have the invulnerability. Do the heroic call to oath, and then just regain the HP with Last Bastion when needed. Thank you again for watching this video. If you liked it, you can let me know by pressing the like button or subscribing to my channel for more videos. And you can check my Twitch and other links on the next sequence. Thank you for watching, guys, and remember to keep it cool. Until next time.